The sense organ, the eye, explained like never before. Welcome to Biomed Explorer. In this video, I'd like to talk about the human eye. I'll discuss what the eye actually is, how a single beam of light travels from the moment it enters your eye to the moment your brain understands what you're looking at, the layers and structures that make this possible, how you see color and depth, what happens when something goes wrong, and the daily habits quietly wearing this organ down without you ever noticing. So let's get started. What is the eye? Most people know their eyes let them see. They know closing them means darkness, and opening them means light floods back in. But very few people actually understand how this small, fragile sphere manages to take scattered light bouncing around a room and turn it into a sharp, full-color, three-dimensional picture of the world faster than any camera humans have ever built. So what exactly is it? The eye is a roughly spherical organ about the size of a ping-pong ball, built almost entirely around one job, converting light into information your brain can use. It's often compared to a camera, and that comparison holds up surprisingly well. There's a lens up front to focus incoming light, an adjustable opening that controls how much light gets in, and a light-sensitive surface at the back that captures the image. But unlike any camera ever built, this organ can adjust its own focus in a fraction of a second, repair minor damage on its own, and send roughly 10 million bits of information to your brain every single second you keep it open. Its entire purpose is to take raw light, an invisible, formless kind of energy, and turn it into shapes, colors, distances, and movement, all before you're even consciously aware it happened. Without this system working properly, the rest of your nervous system would have almost nothing to work with. You could hear a car coming, but you'd never see it. How does a single beam of light travel through the eye? Now let's talk about where vision actually starts, and here's something that surprises a lot of people. The process doesn't begin inside your eye at all. It begins the moment light bounces off an object, say a coffee cup on your desk, and travels toward you. That light first passes through the cornea, the clear dome-shaped front surface of the eye. This single structure does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to bending or refracting incoming light, actually contributing more focusing power than the lens itself. From there, the light passes through the pupil, the dark circular opening in the center of your eye, which is really just a hole surrounded by a ring of muscle called the iris. In bright light, the iris tightens the pupil down to a pinpoint to limit glare. In dim light, it relaxes and lets the pupil widen, pulling in as much light as possible. Just behind the pupil sits the lens, a soft, flexible structure that fine-tunes the focus, stretching thinner to see something far away and thickening to bring something close up into sharp detail. This constant reshaping happens automatically dozens of times a minute without you ever giving it a thought. It's a bit like a self-adjusting camera lens that never needs you to touch a dial. Once light passes through the lens, it travels through a clear gel-like substance called the vitreous humor that fills the main chamber of the eye and finally lands on the retina, a thin layer of light-sensitive tissue lining the back wall. This is where light stops being light and starts becoming a signal your brain can actually read. The retina, where light becomes sight. After light strikes the retina, it reaches a layer packed with roughly 120 million specialized cells called rods and cones, each one built to catch photons and convert them into electrical signals. Rods and cones aren't interchangeable. They split the work of vision into two very different jobs. Rods are built for sensitivity. They vastly outnumber cones, roughly 20 to 1, and are packed mostly around the edges of the retina. They can detect even a handful of photons in near total darkness, which is why your side vision often notices movement in a dim room before your central vision does. But rods can't distinguish color, which is why everything looks gray and washed out at night. Cones handle color and fine detail, but they need far more light to function. They're clustered tightly in a small central pit called the fovea, the sharpest, most detail-rich spot on the entire retina. Every time you look directly at something to read it clearly, you're aiming that object straight at your fovea. There are 3 types of cones, each tuned to catch a different range of light wavelengths, roughly corresponding to red, green, and blue. Your brain blends the signals from all three in different proportions to produce the entire visible spectrum of color you experience, millions of shades built from just three basic inputs. Once rods and cones convert light into electrical signals, those signals pass through several more layers of cells within the retina itself, getting partially processed before they even leave the eye. Then they converge onto the optic nerve, a thick cable of over 1 million nerve fibers that carries the signal directly toward the brain, the optic nerve and the blind spot. Here's a detail that catches almost everyone off guard. The exact spot where the optic nerve exits the eye has no rods or cones at all, which means it physically cannot detect light. This creates a small blind spot in each eye's field of vision, roughly the width of your fist, held at arm's length. You've never noticed it, and there's a good reason why. Your brain automatically fills in that missing patch using surrounding visual information and data from your other eye, essentially painting over the gap so seamlessly you'd never know it exists unless you specifically tested for it. It's one of the clearest reminders that what you see isn't a raw camera feed. It's a reconstruction built and polished by your brain in real time. From the optic nerve, signals from both eyes travel to a crossing point called the optic chiasm, where information gets partially swapped between the two sides of the brain before continuing on to the visual cortex at the very back of the skull. This is where the actual experience of seeing takes place, not in the eye itself. The eye only gathers and encodes the information. The brain is what turns it into a picture. How the eyes create depth and distance. One eye can technically see, but two working together create something a single eye never could, real depth perception. Because your eyes sit a few inches apart, each one captures a slightly different angle of the same scene. Your brain compares these two slightly mismatched images, a process called stereopsis, and uses the difference between them to calculate distance almost instantly. This is part of why closing one eye makes tasks like threading a needle or pouring water into a glass noticeably harder. You haven't lost the ability to see the object, but you've lost the built-in triangulation system your brain relies on to judge exactly how far away it is. Muscles, tears, and the eye's maintenance system. Behind the scenes, 6 small muscles attached to the outside of each eyeball work in coordinated pairs, letting your eyes swivel up, down, and side to side, and critically, letting both eyes track a moving object together in perfect sync. Even the smallest misalignment between these muscles can cause double vision, which is part of why eye coordination takes up a surprising amount of dedicated brain processing. Meanwhile, glands above each eye continuously produce tears, not just for crying, but as a constant low-level maintenance system. Every blink spreads a thin film of tears across the cornea, washing away dust and debris, delivering oxygen and nutrients to a surface that has no blood vessels of its own, and keeping the cornea's optical clarity intact. You blink roughly 15 to 20 times a minute, and each blink briefly relubricates the exact surface that all incoming light has to pass through first. When the system breaks down, given how many finely tuned parts are involved, it's no surprise that vision problems are some of the most common health issues people face. Nearsightedness and farsightedness happen when the eyeball is slightly too long or too short relative to the focusing power of the cornea and lens, causing light to focus just in front of or just behind the retina instead of directly on it. Cataracts develop when the once clear lens gradually clouds over with age, scattering light instead of focusing it sharply, a bit like trying to see through a fogged-up window. Glaucoma involves a slow buildup of pressure inside the eye that can damage the optic nerve itself, often with no early symptoms at all, which is why regular eye pressure checks matter more than most people realize. And macular degeneration targets the fovea directly, the tiny high-detail zone responsible for sharp central vision, gradually eroding the ability to read, recognize faces, or drive. Even simple daily habits take a toll. Staring at a screen for hours reduces your blink rate dramatically, sometimes by more than half, leaving the cornea dry and irritated by the end of the day. It's part of why eye doctors so often recommend the 20-20-20 rule, looking at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes, giving the focusing muscles inside the eye a brief chance to relax. The 3 main jobs of the eye. So now that we've covered all of the parts, let's bring it together. The eye has three main jobs it performs every single moment it's open. The first job is light capture. The cornea, pupil, and lens work together to gather incoming light and focus it precisely onto the retina, adjusting constantly for distance and brightness. The second job is conversion. The retina's rods and cones transform that focused light into electrical signals, encoding color, brightness, and detail before the information ever leaves the eye. The third job is transmission. The optic nerve carries that encoded signal back to the brain, where it's finally assembled, corrected for blind spots, combined with input from the other eye, and experienced as sight. Wrapping it up, there you have it. The human eye, a fist-sized sphere of muscle, fluid, and light-sensitive tissue working every second to turn scattered light into a full-color, three-dimensional picture of the world around you. It bends light through a clear dome, adjusts its own focus dozens of times a minute, converts photons into electrical signals using over 100 million specialized cells, and quietly patches over its own blind spots so seamlessly you'd never notice it exists. Along the way, it relies on constant tear film maintenance, 6 perfectly synchronized muscles, and a brain working just as hard on the other end to make sense of everything it receives. The eye may be something you rarely think about beyond checking your vision once a year, but with every single glance you take, it's converting invisible light into the vivid, detailed world you experience without a moment of delay. Thanks for watching, and Biomed Explorer uploads a new science video every day. Please subscribe and share.